super, super inspiring. I'm actually feeling super happy after listening to you guys. And it doesn't happen very often on conferences, but there is this sense of trying to be very concrete and very good with examples in this future that is different but very inclusive, that I get from all of you. When I heard you talk about schools in Oslo, I wish my kids went to those schools immediately. So you come from very different backgrounds, all of you, and yet you seem to be kind of pulling in the same direction. You know, we have to program our spaces in order to create the social effect that we want. There is a lot of cross-functional, subject-related diversity. And I actually want to start with Espen. Working across fields. What's your experience? I know that Snøhetta talks a lot about diversity and creativity. But then, as a very good architect, you feel that, you know, I know architecture, and maybe the social guy or the landscape guy can do their stuff, but this is my stuff. How do you open up what you do for all these new perspectives?
Yeah, very interesting. First of all, I think you need resistance in any task in order to start to work with something. And I also think that you, for instance, in Ulstein, as I mentioned in my brief presentation, we included a lot of different qualities and qualifications in the initial stage. And the municipality had already done quite a lot of work by actually placing this project in the center of the heart of the city. And they also they were very clear about they wanted the project to do something more than just being like the sports facilities and the library.
They were a demanding customer, and you liked that?
Yeah, definitely.
I'll get back to that, because one thing is having a demanding customer, but are they able to tell you what they really want when you speak different languages? Or how do you go about getting that kind of answer?
I don't think they knew what they wanted. That was part of the task we needed to find out together by understanding the brief was very clear with sports, but all the other things we had to sort of invent along the way. So I think it has something to do with the approach and the method of working with these kind of projects. Yeah.
I didn't even know that what you guys were talking about today is architecture, to be honest. You know, I thought it was about choosing the angles and the colors and maybe the materials, and you were talking about social programming, really. And that fascinates me. Is it hard to do what you do, having a municipality as an owner, or how do you get all that freedom to do what you did with those wonderful schools?
My boss says you always have to have order. You have to have the accountancy and all that in order, and then you buy yourself freedom. You buy yourself an opportunity to do real great things if you deliver all the small things that you're asked to deliver.
But are you an architect by training?
I'm an economist.
Economist. So, I mean, I loved your explanation about this new project at Hof. You know, 8 floors, you can't have a kids' school all the way up, but we'll put the old guys on the top, and there'll be some park. And I was thinking, wonderful. For me, as somebody that doesn't know much about architecture, Snøhetta's explanation about the opera building in Oslo was a revelation. They said, we're going to put normal people at top of high culture, and we're going to make the building very good example of these important values we have, which have to do with trust and openness and community, by making it a very vulnerable building. You know, it's white, and you can steal what you want, and you can break what you want, and yet it is not broken. And so you do that with schools, or with you know, how...
Libraries.
Or libraries, and each school is different.
Yeah.
I still can't get, you know, the bureaucracy element to fit into that level of creativity?
The schools are different, but they're also, they all have classrooms, they all have a kitchen, they all have the functions they're supposed to have, and they're able to make an arena for learning. But people are different, and local communities are different, and you can always build things that are quite different from each other, and still, well, have them all deliver the same basic needs. So equality, we take care of equality as well.
Very cool. Aat, you were talking about public programming, which is something I'll drag into every lecture I do from now on. I'm a programmer, a coder, and I know that it doesn't really matter where you put the semicolon. What matters is understanding the structure of the problem. Mm-hmm. How do you understand the social structure of the problem? You know, you were talking about these third spaces, we are talking about schools, the world is changing. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about that process.
It's about listening. It is mainly and profoundly about listening, and to create tools that help you to listen and to understand what's going on. I'll give you, let's give one complex example and probably a simple example. I'll start with a simple example. When we created Bibliotheeën, we went out to the schools and basically asking the kids not what they would expect from a library, because they were, you know, the concept of a library, you know, the paradigm of a library is about books, right? And they think they're dull and boring and whatever. So we asked them, what do you like to do? What are your needs after school? I said, well, we like to create, you know, and we need a place where we can do stuff that we cannot build at home. I said, well, okay, what do you guys need? Well, a 3D printer. All right, what type of printer you guys need? Well, you know, this is the Mercedes, you know. Okay, come on and buy it with us. So the kids actually, you know, bought the machines. So when we opened, you know, they became ambassadors, you know, and they took ownership of the place. So it's a very, you know, simple example. It doesn't cost any money, just a couple hours of time. But what we created was ownership of a club, an exclusive club, and they became the ambassadors and brought their friends, etc., and so on. So that's a simple example, and a complex example probably takes a bit more time. So you want me to share that with you?
We'll get back to that.
Yeah, that's probably better.
I think listening is important, but then I want to know about telling as well, because I'm pretty convinced that people don't always know what they want or what's best for them.
That's where the complex example comes from.
Mm-hmm.
So there's another project where we really investigated. You remember that map I showed with the colors? Mm-hmm. So what we learned from the colors, what type of society actually is here. Then we took that same methodology and we basically, you know, investigated what type of people are using the current facilities. And we discovered that there was a lack. There was a huge amount of the part of the society basically not using the public facilities. Now that lack matched with the tasks that the community gave themselves. You know, it was about preventing loneliness, creating inclusiveness, etc., and so on. So now we knew who wasn't coming. And we started talking to those people at the streets because we knew how they were looking, we knew about their age, and we started checking. And we started checking and talking to them. So focus groups, interviews, and that sort of thing. And what we learned from that was basically the latent need of society. So we learned about something that we didn't know that was there. And that was basically the source code for our facilities and activities, in a way.
I think that's, that kind of approach to inclusiveness is also very interesting. As I mentioned, I'm an immigrant to Norway, and we had dinner last night, and I was telling Einar about my first few years in Norway. Norway is not an easy country to come to or to break into. A friend of mine says, you know, told me, trying to encourage me in the first year, Silvija, Norwegians are actually quite nice. They're a little bit like a thermos. It's really hard to open it, but when you get in, it's nice and warm. And you know, but you have to survive the first 10 years while you're opening the thermos. And I was telling Einar about my first few Christmases. It feels a little bit like the story of the girl with the matches.
Yeah.
I saw these wonderful candlelit houses, and I knew something cool was happening in there. I just had no idea how to get there or what it was, So when you create these third spaces, physical third spaces, it's super important, especially in a country with climate like Norway, where we don't have the Italian marketplace and the torg, the square, where you have to go anyway, wherever you go. And I think, to me, Arena that we saw seems a little bit like that. Then, on the other hand, I hear from our first conversation, one of the speakers was saying that people in this area are just a little above average stubborn. And maybe they will say, well, we're fine, we have our houses, what do you want with a huge swimming pool, too expensive, or, how do you get it done here? It's expensive, I guess, the basis of my question is these things cost a lot. Is it easy to justify these kinds of investments in a society where we all talk about efficiencies and stuff like that?
It's a huge step for a municipality on our size to do an investment like this. But from what I hear from you guys is that we share one thing, and that is we are radically open-minded in Ulstein, I think I would say. And we don't always know exactly which direction to go, but we have the ability to ask the people who know which direction to go. And that's one of the reasons why we figured out such a great project with the architects on Arena Ulstein. And when I looked at the plans for the library, we had a hunch that this was a little too classical for Ulstein. We need to look at this one more time. So we went to Tøyen, for instance, tried to be radically open-minded. What is here that we can do? And then we found Aat Vos after a while, and had a great partnership with him as well. So, but of course, if Oslo kommune should take a step like we are doing now, they would have to spend more like 16 billion Norwegian kroner, compared to the population in Oslo and compared to Ulstein. So it's a humongous step. We must admit that. But sometimes you have to do a calculated risk, and this is something that the society and the surroundings and the regions asked for. So we did it. But Arena is only one of the examples. I don't think there are many municipalities in Norway who actually owned a gas station. We thought that was risky, but we also knew that this is a strategic area for us. We need to see that there is a development there that is linked to Arena, to Kulturallmenningen, and to make a living city where people want to stay after work. So it's been an interesting travel, and it's a lot because we try to be radically open-minded.
It's very cool. I think it's a very hard balance. All innovation is basically based on recombinations of the past, things, but you break some rules. People say, first you learn all the rules and then you break some rules. Did you break some rules that you thought were absolute when you were building Arena?
Definitely.
Like what?
Well, we changed the site, for instance. We can manage to sort of get the program of the social meeting places within the site. So we asked humbly the municipality, can you buy some more land, or can we swap with the neighbor? And they actually did, which is fantastic. And I think that, as you say, it's not about design. We cannot design the life in the city. People have to do that themselves. But we can facilitate the place for it. And they have to fill it with
their own meaning.
With their own meaning.
Yeah, and it's funny how that meaning, or not funny, it's exciting how that meaning develops as well. I want to ask you one more question. There was, in the previous conversation, there was a reference that I didn't even capture. 100%, but there was something about electronic ferries, or electrically powered ferries, and there was a clapping here in the sea. So, you know, we built a wonderful building on land, but really, this is, you know, not just a little nest, you know, safely tugged on the land. This is really, this place is more of a ship going out on the sea. I mean, they are more on the water than they are on land in some ways, in the way they make money, in the way they've lived traditionally. Is there something we could, you know, traditional architecture is all about doing stuff, safe ground. Could you connect it more to the sea?
Sure, you could. But I think for Ulstein, I think it's about making the core of the city compact. I mean, sure, you can start building stuff in the sea, but why? You don't need to do that. The sea is already there. I think you have, well, maybe in 10, 15 years when Ulsteinvik is bigger than Ålesund, maybe you can start building in the sea. But now I think we should concentrate about building the city as compact as possible around the existing elements.
We want more friction, and then we need to basically
I think so.
keep the pressure up.
Actually, we did.
We want more of that interaction between work and spare time and kids and that connectivity. You know, we're all part of a herd, right? So we want to connect with people, and it could happen in Ulsteinvik, in the city center. We could have moved this, and it would have been quite an interesting architectural move too, to make the swimming facilities up by the ocean. But I think we would have lost something with the compact city center. And when you're a small place like this, one mistake is quite crucial, because it's going to take quite a few years before we could do something about it.
I think, you know, no matter how much we talk about virtuality and digitalization, we are so genuinely social animals, and we basically need to rub against each other. And if you can make people meet, I think that's great. We're running out of time, and I have questions for each of you, and I'll try to speak less so you can speak more. Very briefly, Harald, what changes do you see in pupils when you make these schools? Is there more learning? Is there better society? Is there anything we can say, or do we hope?
They're closer to a more practical environment. If you put a kid into the Ulstein videregående, he will have the opportunity to be close to the businesses, the enterprises. We had a scientist. He wanted to have a small table or something to stop blood from coagulating, and those things were very expensive. And one of the kids in the electronics class said, "Oh, well, we can build one of those," and they actually did it. And I think that's what we want from our schools.
New courage, even.
We need to trigger interest, and we need to make an arena where they can come together, and they'll make the rest of themselves.
Very briefly for you, sometimes it takes an outsider to see the strongest points of an insider. Could you tell us your impression of places like Tøyen and Ulsteinvik, even from a library perspective?
It's basically a pearl waiting to be discovered, because usually the beauty is there. But people tend to not use their front door. They always enter their buildings through the back door. So usually you basically don't see the beauty and the treasure that's there. And I think one of the things that these inclusive places try to do is basically to uplift that treasure, to take it seriously, and to create some kind of a pride towards, localism in a way. Because it's there, it's you, it belongs to you. So why not embrace it and use it like that? And I think that's the main thing what we're doing in the work that we do.
Einar, you with your digital background, are you worried that all the digital spaces are going to be actually attacking the physical spaces, that people will meet less, or no?
There's a chance. I'm not too sure if it's going to go too far. I think people always would want to meet. We just had a local area network gathering in Ulstein Arena during the winter break, and lots of people were there, like, you know, a lot of people. So hopefully technology will, you know, not compete with the social interference. Another thing we've been focusing on here is the importance of trust. It's incredibly important that when we collaborate, you know, business and municipality and the civil service, it's extremely important that we have this common ground of trust, so we don't have to use, you know, lawyers for everything. We have our agreements and are pretty short, and we're able to do things together because what we say is what we do. And I think that's incredibly important to have progress.
Espen, the last question for you. So you built this wonderful thing here in Ulsteinvik. Did you ever think, it's a lot of local pride. Is there something missing, or would you like to extend it in some way in order to have it even stronger social function?
Well, sure. We want to build more, but I think we managed to optimize the potential of this project. I mean, you could always do things better, but I think we can. I think the next phase of developing this project is to actually put meaning into the spaces that we have created. We have sort of inspired or forced people to move in certain paths in order to force them to meet or cross paths. So, but they need to find a life themselves within these spaces. I think this is also something that the municipality can just keep working, keep adding content to the spaces that we have created. Yeah.
Keep adding content and meaning. Thank you so much for a very inspirational conversation.
Thank you.